this video, you will learn when to pick Fiora, which champ she's good against, and which champ she's bad against. It's very important to note. By knowing this, you will increase your win rate by a lot. Alright, let's get into it, and let's start with the ranged top laners. Those are very difficult overall to play against. So the first one is Quinn. Is Fiora good against Quinn? No. Fiora is not very good against Quinn, and the reason for that is because Quinn can just sit back, hit you all the time. The only way you can ever trade with Quinn is by queuing forward and then doubling instantly, hoping she jumps on you and then you stun her. That way you can one-shot her. But if she doesn't use her E at all, and she's just trading with you cleanly, she'll just win every trade and you can't do anything backwards. The only thing Quinn needs to do is sit back, hit you every time you go forward, and if you ever jump in, she Qs, hits you, and she doesn't use her E till you use W. If you use W, she uses her E. Very bad matchup overall, and you should try and avoid it. Now the way to play it is obviously just Q Ws from time to time, hope it hits. If it does and she E's, you kill her. If it doesn't, then well, unlucky, you know? Next up we have urgot. Is Fiora good versus urgot? I actually think that's a decent matchup, but the thing is, you have to really know the champion and you have to be very good at playing as urgot. Now the thing is, when urgot uses E ability, you have a little bit of time where you can actually react to it, and if you react to it and stun him, then you will kill him every single time. It's very, very crucial you do that. Two things to notice: don't get hit by his passive, and you have to W every single E. If you don't do that, you will lose. You can also W your ultimate, another small thing to note, but that is much less important in the laning phase and is only really important in team fights. Next up we have Kayle. Kayle's not a traditional ranged champion, but she is still very difficult. Kayle can play safe, and against Kayle you have to snowball. If you don't snowball, you will lose. Overall, you will get outscaled, you'll have a difficult time later on, and you cannot split push against Kayle, so you'll have to force team fights. It's a bad matchup because of those things, and she limits how you want to play the game, and she forces you to teamfight much more, which can work if you have a teamfight oriented comp with a lot of engage, but overall it's a matchup I would try to avoid. I never got to talk a little bit about the devil of top lane, Teemo. A matchup you definitely want to avoid. The Q is absolutely broken. Yes, you can W Teemo's Q, and that's really important, but just don't play this matchup. It's way too difficult and you don't need to. Now it's time to talk about bruisers. How is Fiora versus bruisers? She's actually pretty good against most of them, so let's get into it. Fiora versus Camille. Very common matchup, probably the most common matchup for Fiora players. It's a good matchup overall. You can win it, you outscale as well. You don't have as much cats as Camille, so it depends somewhat on team comps, but overall, if you get into this matchup, try and focus on split pushing and dominating the game via that. It is a good matchup that you want to play, especially if you're a good mechanical player, because it's all about mechanics in this matchup. Next up, we have Aatrox. This matchup used to be extremely good, but now it's somewhat even. Now, the problem with Aatrox is he got insane healing after the item changes, and he's super strong right now. So, when you play against Aatrox, before you wanted to try and kill him early, but now you have to change your playstyle. He's much stronger than you until you get 2 or 3 items. So play really safe, try and farm. You can kill him prior to the first item, but once he gets the first item, just sit back and farm and focus on that. Get your third item or second item, and then you can start trading. Next up we have irelia. Irelia is a very good matchup for you. You have to play extremely aggressive, and you have to try and catch irelia out behind the minions. If you can get past the minions, she can't jump to anywhere, and you can easily hit your auto attack with E, slow her, and then you can just hit the W and you'll win every single trade. It's an extremely good matchup as long as you play aggressive. Alright, now it's time to talk about the mechanical god champion Riven. Riven is an amazing matchup for Fiora. You should be beating Riven at all times. One really important thing to note is you can W every single third Q. So if you ever use this third Q on you W and you're all in. Easy kill. Now you can also W her stun. So if you ever ease forwards and stun you can predict it, that's also a free kill. Try and play around the W and really focus on it. You have to try and use it on the third Q every single time, and you can win super easy. Now let's talk about one of my old favorite champions, Jax. In this matchup you actually want to run Grasp, one thing to note. Now against Jax, what you want to do is you want to sit close to the minions, play really mechanical, and every time he walks up for a CS, you Q close to you, but outside of his E range, which means you do a little bit of poke on him, and you get the Grasp proc. Now if he ever jumps onto you, you click W instantly, you block his jump damage, and most likely his W damage, because most Jaxes use that instantly. Potentially you also stun him, which could be really nice. If you don't, that's also okay, you don't need to. As long as you slow his attack speed, you will win that trade. Alright, now let's get into the Juggarnauts. Is Fiora good against Juggarnauts? Depends on the champion, mostly yes. Now first up, we have Sett. Is Fiora good against Sett? I would say yes, but it depends who's the better player. A lot of people make the mistake that they try to beat Sett early, which is a massive mistake, and you will lose. Your goal is to focus on farming, get as many CS as possible, and get up to 3 items, and that's when you start dominating. You don't want to play for early game, because if you do, you most likely lose. Now we have Mordekaiser. This matchup is absolutely amazing for you. You do want to pick Fiora into Mordekaiser every time you can. You can easily W his pullback, and at that point, if you ever manage to do that and stun him, you can all in him. It's super easy. Overall, your traits are great, and if you learn this matchup, it's super easy, and you also outscale him tremendously. It's time to talk about the Crocodile Dundee of top lane, Renekton. Renekton is very, very difficult. It's actually not an easy matchup at all. If you can bait out the W, or if you can use your W against his stun, his W, in that case you win and you go in, you can kill really easy. But in this matchup, be very careful about early game. If you play well, you're going to have a super hard early game, and you will lose really hard. So, your goal is, again, you have to farm, you have to get items. And once you get free items, you outscale. Prior to that, you're still weaker than him at all times. So be a little bit careful, unless you snowball and get kills, of course. Alright, now it's time to talk about the bear, Volibear. This guy, scary champion, but one thing to notice is really easy to W his stun. His Q is very predictable. You can always Q out of his thunderstorm, or you can just walk out of it because you hear it. But if you don't make it in time, you can always Q out, so that's also really nice. Now, once after 6, he's really, really strong. You have to be careful after 6. He does tend to beat you at that point. You have to farm, you have to get items. In this matchup, I would recommend you to go Grasp if you want a strong early game. And if you want a strong late game, then go Conqueror. Conqueror is super, super good, especially in this matchup too, if you can survive the early game. But the early game is a little bit difficult. Next up, we have the Boss champion, Sion. Is Fiora good into Sion? I would say no. If the Sion is good and he uses this decimating strike, he can always hit it on you, and he can never W it, which means you're going to lose out every single time due to the window time he had. So it is a terrible matchup, and you shouldn't play it if you can avoid it. Now, one thing to notice, a lot of Sion players are bad. They don't know the matchup perfectly. And if you're against a Sion that doesn't know the matchup perfectly, it turns into a really good matchup. So it's only against the best Sions that you don't want to play it. Now it's time to talk about tanks, and we're starting out rough, Malphite. Malphite is the #1 matchup you don't ever want to play Fiora against. He wins early, he wins mid, he wins late, he's better than you. Don't play this matchup if you can ever avoid it, and it's a really good ban if you're playing Fiora. Next up, Shen. Shen is another matchup that's very difficult. He beats you early, extremely hard, as long as he can stop you from hitting vitals. If you do hit vitals, then you can win. So focus on finding out if the Shen is good or not. If he allows you to hit vitals, then trade with him. If he does not, don't trade with him at all. Just sit back, farm, and relax. Now we gotta bring up the Ornn of top lane. Scary, scary guy with a massive hammer. This guy is actually a pretty decent matchup for you. You just have to play it really well. Now, against Ornn, what you want to do is focus very heavily on your W. You need to W every single time he goes forward to stun you. If you can do that, you win the trade. Again, this is a matchup where you need a lot of items, so be careful, don't go too hard early. Focus on farming and getting your stuff done. Now let's talk about Maokai, the tree of top lane. Maokai is a great matchup for Fiora. If you ever get into Maokai, or if the enemy picks Maokai, you can instant lock Fiora, you beat him in laning phase, you snowball super hard, and you dominate him in teamfights. It's extremely easy to W against him. It's extremely easy to use all your abilities to counter his, and he can't do anything against you at any points of the game. Split push you dominate, teamfights you dominate, and this is a wonderful matchup, so always try and pick it if you can. Alright, that's it for this video. If there's any matchup that you think I'm missing, leave a comment below and tell me which matchup you'd like to see. And I'll see you next time. Peace.